So I'm gonna talk about, or maybe I should present myself. My name is Svahn, and I'm a technical artist at Tarsier Studios. And I'm gonna talk about making a connection, the use of inverse kinematics in hunger. And for those who doesn't know what inverse, is it someone that doesn't know what IK or inverse kinematics is? Someone.
Could you remind?
Yeah.
We have a course right now
about rigging.
Yeah.
So inverse kinematics is instead of rotating each joint by itself and then the joint afterwards will be rotated in that parent space, you place a locator or a target and the arm will follow. So if I place my hand here, the rotation in the arm will follow based on that location of the hand. I think it will make sense when I have this speak. It's about how characters connect with the world physically, like grabbing hold to stuff and like moving and moving in an environment that's with help of IK. So I'm going to talk about first have a short presentation about Hunger, which is the game I'm working on now, and short presentation about Tarsier itself, and our goals and challenges with Hunger. I'm going to talk a bit about animation and how we used IK to get the result we wanted, and also about this third-party plugin called Ikanamma, which I'm going to explain what that is, and then some basic rigging advice for anyone that is an aspiring technical animator or technical artist, and have some kind of summary and Q&A in the end. So I'm thinking that we can maybe, I will try to keep the presentation in 30 minutes and then we can have time for questions afterwards. But if there's something that doesn't make sense, I had like 2 days to make this presentation, so it might be a bit weird or something, then just like, I think it's best to just raise your hand under the presentation. So yeah. So who are we? Because I'm representing Tarsier here today. So Tarsier is a mid-sized studio in Malmö with 40 people, and we have been working mainly with Sony since the start, 2005. So the studio has been around for 10 years, and we have worked a lot with the LBP or Little Big Planet franchise, making assets pack and costume packs and stuff. And then we made the Little Big Planet PS Vita. And right now we're also working on Terraway Unfolded with Media Molecule. And of course we have our own new IP called Hunger. So is there someone that knows what Hunger is or has seen anything? There's some. All the pictures used in the presentation is from that game, and I think I'm gonna show the trailer that we publicly released a few months ago. So, but I'm thinking we say that for last. What I do at Tarsier as a technical artist is, I think. And in some other studios, I would be a technical animator. We have like different titles for the same work basically, but I mainly focus on animation setup and rigging and everything that is kind of around animation, but not animation itself. So making the world move and making the characters feel alive and help the animators to make their work easier. So what is Hunger? Hunger is about a girl called Six. She's 9 years old and trapped in this big ship called the Maw, and she desperately wants to escape. We haven't released that much information, so specifically hunger questions, I'm not gonna answer in the end. But if you have like other questions, that would be awesome. but we have some key feature we wanted to have in this game, Hunger. So Hunger is a suspense adventure, we call it. So it's not a horror game, but it's not like a completely platformer puzzle game, but it's kind of like a mix in between. So we had these key features that was really important for us. One of the biggest thing was this we call tactile controls, and for us tactile means I'm gonna make dance stuff in here now. But instead of walking onto an object and just grab an object or pull a lever, like have a pull a lever animation or an open a door animation, we wanted the character or the player to actually press and hold down to like open the door or press to hold the lever and then move the character to move things around. So we wanted the player to always make the character do stuff and not have like triggered animations, if that kind of makes sense. And it was important for us that the character feel really connected to the world. So if she walks into something, that should move or that should give like an impact back, and not. We didn't want a static world, so we wanted things to move. You are on a ship, so like stuff naturally move with the waves and stuff. And how can we make that like work with a character? Because when stuff move and you have like a character that is going to interact with that, everything gets more complicated than interacting with like a static object. Because then you can have like and then it just to like grab a hold of animation. But what if this table is moving around, like floating in water? Like how will we get this hand to actually grab hold of that object? So that was like one of our biggest challenges, to be able to use objects in multiple ways, to like grab hold of them, drag them, pick up stuff in like different sizes without having to do like thousands of animations, because we're a pretty small studio and it's just like, how can we make this happen? So that was our challenges, our goals with the game. So some basic examples is we wanted to climb objects, and not just like a static ladder that has like evenly spaced out like bars, but what if we wanted the character to climb a stack of plates or like a shelf or whatever? We wanted that to be possible without having, again, to do like separate animation for all of those things. And we wanted her, again, the example I did, like her to pull levers and then her to grab hold of levers, and actually like how can we make her hands be static to that, or like stuck to that object when the object is moving. And again, the example I was told you about, like how do we grab stuff in water that is floating, and foot and hand placement was a big thing. Like what if you're walking on uneven ground? Like it was much nicer to have a character that is like idling or resting with their hand or with their foot like a bit above the air. If they're standing on a rock or whatever, then just have their feet going through the object. So yeah, this was my whole embedded videos. So So here it's an example when she pulls the lever and just pulling it, and her hand is actually stuck to the lever. So we can see it again. It's a bit dark, but I think we made this off. Again, I think we can just show all these examples. So here she's grabbing hold of the tabletop leg, and move that. And I think it's important to say that Hunger is has been in pre-production and is still used as prototype, so none of this is like finished work. And, like if you have a moving object in the ceiling, like this lamp did stay still in the beginning, but if that lamp would have moved, like how can we make the character reach for that object without snapping her to it? Like how can we make the whole body grab hold of that object? And then we have this climbing, which is the climbing on the shelf. And I think you can kind of see, it's a bit quick, but you can kind of see like how she's grabbing on uneven places and actually reaching for specific targets on the shelf and not just, it's not a regular animation going up. It's kind of dark. So those are some examples to kind of get what we need. Let me skip these. So how do we reach this goal? And of course, animation is the core for everything. Like, it would be very hard to automatically, like, in the engine calculate everything where it should go in the engine, and it would be both unnecessary, but it would be very hard to get in some key feature, which is like weight and personality to the characters. So we need to start with animation, and animation is a written animation is core, and it basically is, and you can do a lot of with just animation. For example, Six has this slider, which by looking around with the camera, you are looking around with her arm and the lighter. So she reached with her arm, and we actually didn't use any IK for that, but we're actually blending between different animations. We have one animation when she's in this pose, one here and one here, and then we blend between those. And in Unreal terms, and I think like maybe a lot of other engines also use this name, but we call it blend spaces. So you have an animation blend space which blends between different animations. That makes sense. And we can do a lot with animation blend space, and a lot of things that we couldn't do with that good with using just IK, because we tried first fixing this thing with IK because that would mean less animation for us to work with, but then the arm would kind of go through, and the shoulder part especially is kind of tricky because the shoulder doesn't have that much reach as the other limbs, so it kind of limited here, and it was hard for the IK to get a nice position when it comes to this, when she tried to reach the other end. But it worked pretty good here, but here it didn't look so good. So we needed to use animation for that. And so where can you not use animation? And it's basically when you want exact, precise positions, it's really hard to just use animation. Like I could, like theoretically, have one animation that is here and one animation that is here, and just blend between those two. But it would be really hard if you wanted her to grab hold of this exact position. Maybe it was a handle here or whatever, to actually blend between those animations. And then it's better to actually use world, space, location, and just place the limb there, or the hand, and the arm will follow. So that's why we used IK. And I think a lot of, it's getting more and more common to use IK solving in-game. And I think especially when it comes to walking, you can see it in new games where the example I told you before, when a character is walking on uneven ground, their foot is actually placing really nice on top of that ground and looks really cool. And the same when they idling or you standing still, that they have these nice poses. And what it also can do is it reduces the impression of sliding. And I don't know if you know what sliding. I think you've seen it if you play like games, and the feet kind of looks like they're sliding on ground. And then that happens when the speed, the animation was created. Like if I create a character that is supposed to walk this fast, this distance, but he walks faster or slower in the engine, then it kind of looks like that character is sliding. And by using IK, you can reduce that impression. So I think IK is getting like more and more common to use now in game engines. But we wanted it for that reason, but specifically because Six is a child. She's a 9-year-old girl, and we wanted her to be able to climb stuff and grab hold of stuff, which children do, and have that. So we wanted the hand and foot placement was really important. So we're using Unreal 4 for this. And have any of you used Unreal? So then maybe you know, I don't know how much animation things you've done in Unreal, but maybe you know there's like two IK systems in Unreal. One that is called 2-bone IK and one that's called Fabric. So the 2-bone IK, have any of you like rigged stuff in Maya? Yeah, I think most of you have. So that's good. So the 2-bone IK is basically the RPSP, like the rotate plane solver in Maya. You have it's good for like arms and legs. So you have like an whole vector constraint which you set up in Unreal, and you can place like arms and legs, and it looks pretty good. So the limitation to the 2-bone IK is when you want to use it more for a limb that has more than 2 bones. Kind of makes sense, but it only works for 2 bones. And for example, if you have an arm and you use IK on that arm, it will not move the shoulder. And I don't know if you know this, but there's very little you can actually do without moving the clavicle or like the shoulder. So when you actually, if I would just have my shoulder pressed down and try to reach my arm, like I can't reach higher than this. So like to actually get a nice IK movement, you want it to influence at least down shoulder and probably all the way down to the spine. So if I'm reaching further than the arm can reach, that my body will follow. So the 2-bone IK didn't work for that. So then the Fabric, it's kind of like the spline IK in Maya, and you can use it on like multiple bones, like in how long IK or like joint chain you want. The problem with Fabric is that it kind of looks like snaky, or like you have tentacles or whatever. Like it's hard to get a nice bend, actual bend. It's more like I have this weird soft arms. So we couldn't use Fabric either. So we needed to use something that solves the whole body in real time. So there's a couple of different full body solvers for Unreal 4. There's one which is Autodesk's own. It's called Human IK, which seemed to work pretty good. I haven't used it. But we decided to go with a third-party plugin called Ikanamma, which have the plugins for both Unreal 4 and for Maya. And what is Ikanamma? So Ikanamma creates a separate rig, which you include all the joints you want to be influenced in that rig or in that solver. So then I get the result that if I place a hand there, the whole body will be influenced by that. And if I place like a leg here and it's too far for her to reach, like the whole body will follow. So it will solve the whole body and kind of create the most natural position it can based on the animation. And what's also, I think like it might be kind of hard to understand. I don't know if it's like too abstract, but it's really cool. And what Ikanamma also does is that it works on top of the animation. And so instead, if I have a really nice like grabbing animation and I want to use like IK to grab like over here, then that would just replace the animation. Like I wouldn't have anything of this nice curve that the animator have done, but instead just cut that and use the IK, so let the IK solver. But Ikanamma use the animation and then try to like move the whole body and preserving so as much as it can by the base animation, but kind of like tweak it. That makes sense? I don't know. But so basically you won't get like elbows bending the wrong way because it will work on top of the animation. So it will see where the natural bends is, and therefore it will also work really nice with shoulders, because if the animator has done a really nice grabbing and like shoulder motion, then Ikanamma will use all of that and kind of like just tweak it. So it gets a really nice result, and it saves us time, and it also makes her animation kind of a bit more organic, because every animation is a bit different. Like when she's climbing, you won't get just a loop of a climbing animation, but it will kind of look a bit more organic and different for each climb. If the shells, for example, are a bit different, then she will reach. It's like very slight and subtle like changes, and I think that's the key. You don't want to use like IK or IK solver to replace stuff, but more to like get that extra thing, because then it will just look really nice. And we can reuse the same animation for like objects that have different sizes. You can just use like one grab animation. It can be small and it can be big object. Like the hands will adjust based on that. So just some like rigging advice for anyone wants to go this route or whatever. So I've written that animator is always right, and this is of course false. Animator is basically always wrong. But the key thing is that the animator, what they want is the most important. So if they want something, often they come with these crazy things. They want to do this crazy thing, and their solution is often like really like weird and maybe stupid, but it doesn't matter, because what they want, you as a rigger or technical artist or whatever, you should be able to deliver to them. Like you should find a solution, and the end goal is that what the animator wants to make like magic, you need to provide to them. So that's what I mean with animator is always right. And right now I'm in the process of updating all the rigs for like from getting like for the new game. Yes. It's hard. I'm not gonna talk so much about the production of the game, but I am in the process of updating all the rigs for all the characters. And when I did the rigs from the beginning, I kind of wanted to make like the perfect rig. I don't know, like any of you, like I really like rigging. That's like one of the things I really like. So if you don't like that, then maybe you don't understand. But if you are a technical artist, you kind of want to find like the perfect solution. The problem is there's never a perfect solution, and especially if you're using things that someone, or if you're making stuff that someone else is gonna use, like if you're doing tools or like scripts or rigs or like shader that someone else is gonna use. Like if you do system for someone else, then your perfect solution is not the perfect solution, because what the end user, which is not the player in this instance, but like the artist that's gonna work with the tools, their solution is like the most perfect because they are the one that's gonna use it. So now I have decided that I will build the rigs more modular. So instead of building this perfect rig that is like combined and really nice, and I know like every inch of it, but it's really also connected and kind of hard to replace parts of it. I try to think like the arm should be like self-sustainable, and I should be able to take that arm to another rig because it's much easier, because that's usually what you update in a game production. Like the animator will say, oh, I would like to do this with the hip, and like I want to have this result, and then if that hip is connected with the feet and with the hands and with the head and with the shoulders or whatever, it's gonna be really a pain in the ass to fix those things. But again, you have to fix it because the animator is always right. So I think like try to build stuff as modular as you can, and that goes like with scripting and everything. Like make it as easy for you to change it in the future. And some things just I will see how much time it is. Okay, so it's nice. Rigging for Unreal. Use some small things. I don't know, like if you use Unreal, like always use. But I think this is true for like most game engines. Always use like a separate bind skeleton. That means don't export the actual rig skeleton to the engine, but do have like a separate rig skeleton, and then create a bind skeleton, and like do like a parent constraint or a direct connection between those two. Because some things like an icon spline, when you bake that and export that, that doesn't come out correctly, and it would just make your life so much easier if your character is not bind to a rig skeleton. Then it's much more easier to iterate the rig without like messing up the skinning or whatever. So that is a tip. And also, like specifically for Unreal, this feature called root motion. I don't know if you know what that is. Because it basically, if I have an animation that, like for a character that is doing like a sword thing, like fighting, whatever, and that character is going forward in that animation, I want that movement to follow the animation. So, like maybe, like there's a lot of engines that have this root motion feature, but basically instead of having just an animation that is like this, and then try to move that character, also like trying to match up the movement with the animation, you can bake down the movement with them. Kind of maybe not make sense if you haven't worked with it, but one of the things that is good if you work with root motion, if it's Unreal or whatever, is that you always, the root joint of the rig should be like a joint in the point of interest, instead of like pelvis or whatever. You see that in a lot of rigging tutorials that they have like the root for the rig in the pelvis, but keep that in the point of interest, then it's easier for the animator to actually set how many units is the character moving, like forward and stuff. And I will just skip this rigging for Ikanamma because I think that's a bit complicated, but we can look at the trailer now.
What's the point of interest in a rig? Or I recognize this number with the pelvis, putting the root joint there. What is the point of it? Where would you put the
Origo.
Origo.
So the point of interest is Origo in Swedish. So I would put the root joint like at 0, 0, 0 in world space, instead of having it like that's also a thing. I wouldn't like put the character's pelvis in 0, 0, 0 in world space. I would have like the feet standing on, like if you have Maya for example, and you have the Maya grid, I would have the character standing on the grid, but I would have the root between the feet, and then have a joint going up to the pelvis, if that makes sense. Like so, yeah. Like skiing or whatever. I can show, because I had this embedded cool thing, but So we released this trailer a couple of months ago, I think maybe 2. About like animation or rigging or Unreal that is not about the game itself, I will happily answer. Yes?
What's your story and how did you like come to become a technical artist and love rigging?
So basically I was going to a gymnasium school that was called that is called Judobilskolan, and I was reading like also cool. And I was reading game development there, and I think maybe like in the second or the last year, me and 2 friends, we were created a mobile phone company and created like mobile phone games. So I did like that first, and then I started at the game assembly with the intention of going more, I think, art, just I guess like the more technical things. So and then I was reading technical artists. The game assembly started like technical artist education, so I went with that. But I had been doing like rigging and stuff like that, like since we did mobile games, because we did like 3D mobile games. So and then I ended up at Tarsier for like my internship, and now I'm there. So I don't know if that was like an interesting story, but I really like it. Was basically I started at the game assembly, and kind of like I think everyone else wanted to be like a 2D or like concept artist or whatever, but everybody was so good, and I was like not that good. So I just had to find some other strength that I could compete with, because I would not get like an internship as a concept artist. So then because I knew more about like 3D and the technical stuff than like the other students, I guess this became my tasks more naturally. Yeah.
Do you have some sort of like usual tip that you give to like new riggers who are just starting out, and like how to get into it in from the right direction to get interested and passionate about it?
To get passionate about it. So basically I really like cleaning up like the outliner and stuff in Maya. I really like order, and just not generally in life, I'm kind of like chaotic, but like I like having like sort things on my computer and stuff. So I guess if you kind of like that, then it's not so hard to get into. If you hate that, then maybe reading is not for you, because it's a lot about having like order or like a chaotic order at least, so you can know where to look for your own stuff when you need to change stuff, and how to get like things connected and stuff. So I don't know, like, that if you don't like rigging, I don't think maybe it's for you. But like, if you find it fun, I think there's a lot of tutorials for rigging online. Like Rob was talking about how there's not so much VFX, and that's true. There's not so much VFX, but they're kind of a lot about rigging stuff, and a lot of them are shit, but you kind of have to learn, and then you find your own way. There's not like, it's like one of the things I think new rigger are doing maybe wrong, like myself included, but I think you should do those mistakes yourself. But you want to find, like I said, the perfect solution. Kind of like, I guess, like technical artist oriented. Like, you want to find solutions for problems. You, like, I think naturally like problems, but just like realize that like there's no perfect solution, and that like it's better to just like learn different stuff and find like how can you use your knowledge for specifically this character instead of have a generic rig for all characters. I don't know, like every character is different, so for that, I don't know if that works.
I don't know if this is a question about the game, but what about the hanging lamps that you swinging? How their motion? What is causing that? Is it the animated motion? Or?
Yeah, so that is actually when she gives out an impulse when she's grabbing the object. So that is kind of ties in what I said at the beginning, that we wanted like a physical world. It's the same if you walk into like a glass jar and that falls, like it will break. So that was basically her grabbing hold of it, and it will move because the force of her body going against it.
Is it physics in engine, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you constrain it so it can like swing sideways?
This lamp can actually swing in like all that, but since she was going from that direction, it's like maybe like if you jump into a rope. I guess I haven't done it, but I guess it will go back and forth. But, yeah.